So this is the Board of Selectmen meeting of May 13th, 2019. We are currently in our workshop portion of the public meeting, and it is being audio taped for record-keeping purposes.
I'm just smiling because I laugh because I still refer to them as tapes. Like even today I told someone I was like requesting tapes at the Hingham District Court, and they just looked at me and I laughed. I'm like, that's right. I said tape. I'm that old.
You know, you should probably give a recap of what we just discussed.
Sure.
If you have it in front of you, probably.
Absolutely. So the few items that we discussed were the police and fire union contract statuses. We identified that the police contract has been signed prior to the election, but the fire contract has not yet been signed. Blythe took us through some of the procedural items that have been related to the fire contract process and what it looks like in terms of the outline of where we'll be moving forward in terms of getting more information from the HR director and the town administrator before we make a decision on signing as a board around our second or third meeting this year. The second item we discussed was the fire chief status. We discussed the resignation that was submitted by the previous fire chief, the appointment of a new fire chief, his withdrawal of his candidacy for the position, and our options for moving forward in terms of the process and structuring of a search committee and all the other considerations related to that. The next item we discussed was the public safety building project. We aligned on where we were right now and also discussed where our main decisions will be moving forward. We talked about our path forward on the fire station project, given the overspend on police, as well as the makeup of the public safety building committee. I believe that our outcome from this item was to get some more information, collect some options for what we have in front of us in terms of moving forward, and also to discuss in more detail the makeup of the members of that Public Safety Building Committee as we move into our appointment period.
Right. I think that's where we left off, right? I think
Correct.
We hadn't finished that action item.
I'm jumping ahead. My apologies.
You need to slow down.
Sorry. I thought we were much further along.
Slow down.
Do we know what our contract reads for the architect currently? I mean, I know my understanding is there hasn't been much provided to the town, but the town has paid him close to $40,000 already. So do we know what our legal ties are to this?
That's what I want to spend some time researching and then possibly discussing with you in executive session, in case it may lead to a path that would require that. So I want to gather that and then also talk about, from where we stand, where do we want to start from? Do we want to head down a different path with a new committee and a new process? And we can lay out for you what those steps are. They're very similar to how the committee started for the police station. It's just back to the beginning, if that's what the board thinks is the best way to approach this project and do it the right way.
So I know that we don't have all of the information yet, so we're not weighing in per se, but my initial 2 cents would be that I would sort of tend to think, without any other information, but I throw this on your heads up display for when you're ruminating, that a new board, or at least some new blood in the board, would be not a bad idea given where we ended up. Certainly some new contractors may again also be something that we need to do, and I'm wondering if an audit is how you figure out, if you bring in the state, is there a way to figure out where all of the I's were not dotted and T's were not crossed, if that's a way that you go, and then you sort of take a look at the audit to help you decide with respect to some of the contractors.
Right. I think in this case, in any project, public building project that costs more than $1.5 million, you are required to hire an owner's project manager, and the town did that with the public safety building, and then from there hired the architect. Those are the normal 2 steps. I think from what I know about the project, the town didn't take missteps there. Maybe they didn't hire the most ideal firm.
Well, I'm speaking of the people that they hire. I'm not casting aspersions upon the town. I'm just wondering, somebody made some missteps. It was either someone we hired or someone they hired or someone they hired, but something happened. We didn't just somebody accidentally did something wrong with the $450,000 for the roof, right? There are there were missteps that were made. And
Yes.
so I just think it's worth figuring out whose fault they were, so we're not using that person or company
Yes,
again.
I want to do some research. I'm not sure if it's the state is the best group to ask, or
Right, I
is
don't
it
know either. I
through
just
town
wanted to
council,
make sure
a
you
firm
knew-
that does these
Right.
sorts of things to help us decide what path the
And
town
maybe
should
we don't
take.
do that. I just wanted to not to sort of sit quietly and have people think that I was like, yeah, new, same board, great, same architect, great, without
Exactly.
first drilling down.
Exactly.
That's all.
Yep.
And
So
one of
let
the
me come
things-
back to you with some recommendations on that and some more information, and then we can discuss it some more.
One of the considerations is on that board sits a member of the Board of Selectmen. The person that was previously sitting on that board is no longer part of the board. Therefore, that created a vacancy. So perhaps now would be a good time to see if anybody has interest in filling that role.
I'd be interested, but I don't want to jump on anybody else's who's maybe got their heart set on it or has been going to sleep at night like, I hope I get that board. This way it's good. It's not audio tape. It's just videotape. Fine. So I'm happy to do that board, but if somebody else really wanted to do that board, I would graciously step aside.
It's all yours.
All right.
Do we know when that next meeting is, Blythe?
Oh yeah, I probably should have asked that right before I said, yeah, I want that
I-
board.
Don't. I believe there'll be some need to wrap up some final payments and paperwork, but I will check with the staff people and find out.
As an aside, I have, I think I told you I wanted to do that, the June 8th Selectmen's thing. And then Sean today was like, I have a wedding on the 8th. Too bad. I'm going to the Selectmen's training. So he's going stag to the wedding.
Oh, jeez. Chris, did you happen to know if you'd like to go to the new Selectmen's training session? It's on a Saturday.
I don't mind that at all.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
sign you both up then.
Yep.
A light breakfast and a free lunch. So
It's very exciting stuff.
Now, do we have to appoint Cece to the board, the building committee board, or how do we do that?
I do believe that
I
we
think we
would
have to
take a
make a-
vote and
we have to
appoint
make
an
a
appointer.
motion, right.
Luckily, I do not see a meeting for them scheduled for in the next month.
Okay.
So we can
we'll
do that
find
once
out
we get
and
into
we'll
a
put
public
it on
session.
your next
Okay.
meeting agenda so
So
you
just
can
put
do
that on your
that.
agenda
Yep.
so we
Yep.
can do that.
Okay.
I'm mouthing to David that I have an idea for him after. It's not a Selectman thing. I mean, it's kind of, but
All right. Does anybody have anything else on the public safety building? No?
I'm also with that.
No? Good. All right. Next, the HOD roof replacement. I can give the high level here. Blythe, if you can fill in any gaps or things that I missed, I'd invite you to please do so. Essentially, this project has been in the works for the better part of 2 years, as I understand it. I've been working, well, not working with Matt, but been kept abreast of what's been going on in terms of the advancements that have been made in the project and getting funding and whatnot with Matt over at least the course of the last year. Essentially, it was identified that there is a need to replace most of that roof, if not all of that roof. There is a grant program that we were able to receive that gave us funding for about $1 million of that project. Our initial quotes came in where we thought they would be around $2.6 million for the project as a whole. The caveat was that there is a portion of that roof that is newer than the rest of it. And one of the requirements for this grant is that your roof has to be at least 25 years old. So while the portion of the roof that was 25 years old does qualify for the grant, the other section that is not 25 years old, I believe it is only 20 years old, is not covered. So the thing that Matt had pointed out to me initially was that that newer portion of the roof is in the worst condition, and is in the most dire need of repair. So in order for us to be able to address these concerns in one fell swoop, the town would have to put up the money for the repairs to be done on that section of the project. Originally, we had expected that amount that the town would have to cover would come in somewhere around $800,000 to $900,000. Is that accurate? But after we went out to quote, which we just received within the last month, I believe, we came out of our quoting process and had 2 quotes come in. I believe our lowest was 3.4.
Just over $3 million, and we had 1 bid in the bidding process.
Gotcha. So that increased the amount the town would be on the hook for by $600,000 about?
Yeah, we're about $1.5 million if we spend the contingency and we build the roof exactly as it's designed. We don't value engineer some of the things out of it that aren't required by the state.
So that takes us to town meeting tomorrow. We're supposed to be going to get this approved. One of the other fun caveats as it pertains to this grant program is that town meeting has to approve the full cost of the project, not just the portion that we're going to be paying. So we would be going to town meeting with that full $3 million, $3.5 million project quote.
But can't you, correct me if I'm wrong, but so my thinking, and I'm just a town meeting member tomorrow, like if I want to weigh in, I'm going to toddle down to a microphone and give my 2 cents. And thus far, based on everything, talking with Dr. Alardi and with school committee and reading everything and so forth, what I would like to say would be essentially, you don't want to lose, I mean, you may not lose it,
Right.
but you could, and it seems like, why would you risk it, losing the money? I also understand if you extend it a year, something like a 5 or 6% increase next year over this year. So that's like another $200,000 on top.
In construction costs.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
So wouldn't it make sense if you can do it? So this is what I was thinking. So worst case scenario, I think you have to do it. But I was thinking maybe you say, we vote for the full amount, because I understand that the state's requirement is you have to do the full amount. And we're like, yay, we've got the full amount. Or, grr, we have the full amount. And then we go back and we say, and we're not renegotiating the labor, right? Because you're not going to negotiate. They'll say to heck with you. But we then say, instead of the fancy pants copper, how about metal? And instead of the fancy pants, the other areas that you don't need, that were more just, hey, it's other people's money, whatever. We see if we can't have those pulled out.
And those conversations have already started. I think Chris has been instrumental in those.
But that's possible, isn't it? So that we still we don't lose our grant.
It's possible to a point, and the point that it isn't is where in order to get the state's money, they require that you go through a vetting process to make sure the roof is really in bad condition, and they have minimum standards about energy efficiency and the lifetime of what they're helping pay for. So the things that they require, we couldn't negotiate.
No, I'm thinking small. I'm thinking like 100. So for an example, my understanding is that when they were originally given quotes, they explained that certain things that might need to be changed, you couldn't use ladders, you would need to use lifts. And that was prohibitively expensive to sort of fix shingling and so forth. And so you needed metal that would prevent constantly having to bring in the lifts. That saves you money. And that the original quote, they were told it's probably $80,000 for metal, $80,000 for copper, which mystifies me, but whatever. And they came back and it was $250 for copper. So I don't think the state cares about, and it's not insignificant. It's $170,000, right? I don't mean, obviously the roof has to get fixed, and I certainly understand you and I had communicated about the fact that it needs to get done in a way that it's not impacting the kids. So I get that people backed away from bidding because of the time constraint. I'm just wondering if there's a way, understanding that that the reason that we got the grant was because of the needs and the requirements for certain of the windows and the et cetera. That's all.
Yes, you definitely can do that. Those conversations have already started to try to bring the project in less than the bid came in What the contractor will give us for some other material other than copper, I don't know sitting here.
Right.
But I would say overall it would be less than the ultimate cost of the town.
Right, because, and then I guess, right, I understand that you can't, we're seeking leave from the town tomorrow to secure the entire amount.
Right.
I also find it unlikely that we will end up with money in our pocket, even if let's play the hypothetical out and they say, sure, fine, we'll do metal flashing and we won't do the fancy, corners and so forth, and you end up with a savings of $150,000. They're going to find there's going to be overages, right? I mean, public safety building tells me that there's going to be overages. There's things are going to come up when they open, like they always do, right? When you open something up,
there may be.
I watched HTV.
I think the state has been doing this for years, and they've gotten quite good at it.
Right.
They also require you to use certain contractors that they've had a track
right, and I understand
record
part
with,
of this is you're dealing with a governmental bidding process.
Yes, so
which is different. I get that. So
there may be, and that's why there's a contingency in there, but ideally we don't spend it all. And what we will do is we'll initially borrow on a short-term basis what we're required to.
Right.
And we won't place the final bonds for the long term until we have the final price, which ideally will be less, and so the annual cost less as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That was my 2 cents.
Now for the opposing view.
You'll toddle down to the other microphone.
This is a $3.5 million project. $1 million being picked up by the state, which means $2.5 million being picked up by the taxpayers. The $600,000, that's the overage from the Freeman Kennedy School, is still taxpayer money. Mm-hmm. It isn't some free money that we just found in a box. It's taxpayer money. So it's $2.5 million of taxpayer money for a roof. We want to keep our kids weather tight, and we want to keep them safe. We don't have to gold plate a building to do that. The state requirements require gold plating this roof in order to get funding. It is frivolous. And Matt told me, you're an affluent town. It should reflect that in your buildings. It's sort of ironic that the police station rebuild started with, we have a leaky roof we can't fix. And look where we ended up. This is frivolous spending. It is, if I was building a new school, this would be a fantastic spec. It's a great spec. Gail did a great job on this specification. But it is a specification for a new building. This school needs a new roof. We didn't hear about mold and mildew. We heard that there's energy loss, which we understand there is, and we heard that it leaks. Just like in our own homes. We restrip it and we replace the roof. The fact that it is such a detailed specification that has to be done in 8 weeks, one, we have to close down the school because not all roofers can be quarried, so that's why they've got to limit it to an 8-week period. And because of that, any contractor who does prevailing wage, roofers get $70.76 an hour in their paycheck for prevailing wage. The contractor is going to put into this bid probably a third of his hours at overtime hours, over $100 an hour. We're paying for that premium because of the detail of the specification. A re-roof of this school can be done in 8 weeks. When you add in all the extras, no, it cannot. We have the windows with Sean Dooley got us last year, I guess. They could be put in at a separate time. They could have already been put in under a separate contract. So we have green initiatives that we're working with, the Energy Commission. A lot of this insulation and other work, there may be grants for that. I think we've just jumped the gun. We're going the same path we went on the police station. And I think it's going to backfire. And I think it's we may be losing $1 million, but I might be saving $1.1 million based on what I think the figures are.
And that was going to be my question for you, Chris, was what you estimated it to be done in a manner that you're talking
Close
about.
to $1.1 million or $1.2 million. Just think of this, the insulation alone that they're putting on the exterior of the school, my estimation will take 20-year payback. The cost of that insulation installed will be a 20-year payback. That doesn't make any sense. In 20 years, we may be educating our children from home using a computer. I don't know the answer to that, but a 20-year payback. So I think there's a lot of, it's a great spec if you were starting all over again. This is only a 25-year-old building and a 19-year-old building. This is not a 100-year-old building. As most of you know, I work in Worcester, I work in Shrewsbury, I work in Southborough, I work in Hanover, I work in Newton, I work in Somerville, I work in Millis, I work in Franklin, I work in Dover. The only town I just named that has schools newer than ours is Franklin. And every one of these communities is educating their children in dry environments, and they're not spending this kind of money. It is just too much of a gold-plated roof system. I applaud their work on it, but I think they went down the wrong path. They really should have been looking at it as a re-roof. And obviously, timing is terrible. It comes in the heels of the overrun at the police station. So as we just talked a few minutes ago about trust, we don't have the public's trust. And now we're going to come to them again. And I even had the president of Beacon Sales call me today, which is one of the major roofing contractors in New England and the country, who happens to live in Norfolk. And he sells roofing products. So it's his advantage for these type of projects to go forward. And he said, don't tell me you would even consider this, would you, as a selectman? And I smiled at him and I said, you know where I'm going with this. So even people who are in the industry know what this is. I would hope that we can avoid bringing this to the town floor tomorrow. I think it should actually be pulled from the warrant. I do not think we're ready to do this. And I do not want to look silly or have anybody look silly up there because of this, to be perfectly honest with both of you and all of you. It is just, a lot of work was put in, but they did not consult, and I'm not saying me, they did not consult professionals in the industry and talk about this and discuss this. It was a very small group that moved forward on this, and I don't think they put in 4 hours, I was able to pull this thing apart. And even if you look at the warranties on this, I mean, Matt talked about copper roofs. For longevity, the warranty on this roof is 10 years, labor and material. After that, it gets prorated. The warranty on everything else being done is 2 years. That's it. That's it. If you really wanted to do this right, you would have bid a new roof with a gold seal, they call it warranty, which would give you 25 years labor and materials non-prorated warranty. In other words, no leaks in your building due to your roof. And by major manufacturers, GAF, Certainty. That's not in this specification at all. And I know it's some of this is Greek. It is what it is. And Matt, I never was approached on this. If someone asked me, I would have probably told them this early on. But these are really the pitfalls of this proposal. It is so gold-plated that it's going to get us in trouble.
My understanding is that if you want to go through the MSBA's process, there are certain requirements that come with it, and that they expect you to meet certain energy requirements and so on, and that this is not just, I'm not in roofing,
Nope.
in construction, but that this roof, given its age and the situations we've had, needs more than just shingles. It needs some of the trusses reinforced. It needs insulation of a certain type. And maybe it certainly doesn't probably need copper. I mean, I think we've all...
It needs the insulation to meet their requirements for energy code. The problem is, do we need that?
Well, if we're trying to get... I know that the Energy Committee is working hard on their 20% reduction plan,
Yep.
which is required by green communities. I mean, not that you want to pay this much for it, but being able to use this as one of the things that reduces our energy footprint in that 20% might be quite helpful to that overall plan.
But the overall cost will cost us 20 years to recoup, which makes no sense.
Well, so I think, okay, so the reality is if we walk away from a vote tomorrow night or it goes down, then have lost the money we spent so far on the design we've done. we're going to pay someone to do the specs over again. We're waiting till next summer to do it because of the school year. And, there's the cost of escalation.
6%,
So
I think.
I'm not saying I'm saying I know the best outcome. I'm just saying if we want a roof that I was told, maybe maybe incorrectly, that this roof will last us many years better than the one that's there, we won't have to worry about it. Maybe that's a good thing to do. But I think I would respectfully suggest to the board, maybe you want to take a different vote of the board's position, but we haven't talked to advisory, we haven't talked to school committee. I think my humble opinion is the town deserves to debate it tomorrow and decide what it wants to do and hear all voices. And I appreciate that you may not have a unanimous vote, or maybe 2-1, one way or the other.
No, I have no problem doing that. I feel it would be, I think it's putting the town in a, I've already seen it on Facebook. For some reason, already on Facebook, people are being told to come to town meeting to vote for a school roof.
Okay.
Which tells me, how did they hear about this? Most people aren't even aware of this roof. But all of a sudden, the word was out. You better get to town meeting and vote on a roof.
Okay, well.
So, I know why. Those same people will all be walking out after the vote on the school roof. It is a calculated method to approve a roof and approve $2.5 million of taxpayer money in the light of we can't give you a fire station. We can't give you paved roads. It's a bit of a slap in the face, as I told you in my email to the taxpayer. And yes, all those requirements are requirements of the state program. But is it what we need in Norfolk today? Maybe not. Maybe not. And I think that's the concern I've had with this, is that it seems as if it's a little bit, any of you own homes, how many of you reinforced your trusses or your rafters when you've done a roof project? How many of you have asked a contractor to go up to your attics and check the rafters? None of you. How many of you have done a scan to make sure you have the proper infiltration or filtration of air?
I think that was all part of the MSBA process. That I'm just
it
not
is.
intimately
It's just
familiar
the question
with.
was what did we need versus what did we want to buy? The cost alone of this, just to give you an example, on an average home, a roofer will give you an estimate for a roof. If you use the same cost, and if it is $250,000 we've spent on this so far, that would mean that an average person in Norfolk who asked a roofer to come out and estimate his roof would have paid close to $5,000 just for the estimate. And that's just a rough calculation. That's another word, junior roof, and I say, give me $5,000 just for the estimate. The taxpayers have spoken. They have said they're tired of spending without accountability. And that's all I'm bringing to this argument, is that the accountability of this was not done 6 months ago when it should have been done. And I apologize to both Matt and to Ingrid that, I'm sorry that it was the 11th hour on Thursday when I saw this. But I said, if you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have brought all these questions up to you. But I think there's a lot of questions. And we can bring it to the floor, and I know it seems like people want to bring it to the floor, and the room may be stacked with parents, and that's fine. But I think I will have to, if it goes forward as it is, and you can't say we'll do our best to reduce the number. Not going to happen. The contractor knows the number. He's not going to vary very much from that number.
So rebidding will do us no good in this
Rebidding will do us no good, and nobody wants it at this level. The gold plating of this will not bring any other roofers out. They can't afford it. The cost of paying your roofers over $100 an hour. It's very few roofers. Greenwood is one of the largest roofers in New England. He employs about 175 people. So he can afford to do this. Most other roofers cannot. They just don't have the manpower to put that many men on this project, and the overtime alone. It's just most companies can't absorb that. Mm-hmm. And that's some of the driving factors here. So,
and I apologize, I'm probably going to lean a lot on your expertise in the matter, but in your assessment of where the roof is as it currently stands, is there an imminent concern about risk related to greater leaks, structural issues, mold, or anything like that that would cause us to have more urgency behind imposing a resolution.
I don't think they've talked, I saw nothing in anything that talked about mold and mildew. There is no breaches of the trusses on this section of the roof. This is, they call the addition. The main building had breaches in 2015, which they went in with through insurance and they were able to repair. And I guess they went through the entire main section of the building and repaired all the trusses that needed replacement. This addition, there's all kinds of controversy as to were the trusses built to the current building code in 1999. But no one can tell you definitively what they were built to. Gail went in and said, no, they weren't, but it's really hard to say that a truss manufacturer built them wrong. A truss manufacturer engineer stamped them when they left the factory saying, yep, they're wrong. They went to a structural engineer who reviewed the project, and he got it wrong. So 4 levels of review got the trusses wrong. But even if they all got it wrong, this building has stood 19 years of snow, hail, rain. So are the trusses bad? And in New England now, we've come to a new policy of shoveling off our roofs when we have snow. At schools, they just do it if there's a certain amount of snow. So will Norfolk always shovel off this roof if we have 30 plus inches of snow? Yeah, probably, because every other town will do it and will be forced to do it, similar to what we were forced to do in 2015 and 2014. So is there an imminent danger with the trusses? No. Is the sheathing bad? They say nothing about the sheathing being the plywood deck needing to be replaced. So this is really just a lot of enhancements to an existing structure. And they're all wonderful enhancements. But even if you take out the copper and replace it with a standing seam metal, you're still looking at a sizable amount of money just by what it takes to do it. And that's really the issue here. I mean, it's well done, but it's probably not what we needed. And getting caught up in the grant, I think, is where the mistake was. We probably should have assessed our roof and said, what do we really need to do here? Not what can we do here. Like I said, we can all drive to this town meeting in a Ferrari or a Toyota. We'll all get here the same. Just depends what we want it to look like, right? They both get us to the same place. We want a dry roof for the kids. That's where, and we want to put our money into books, want to put our money into computers, want to put our money into supplies. I don't think we should be putting our money into extravagance that may not get us there.
And from your perspective, there's really only 2 outcomes. Either we build a roof under the MSBA's guidelines and approve this money, or we don't build it now. We wait until at least next year to do something different.
I don't think you have to wait till next year. I think you can roof this building this summer if you can get. I forget the timing of specific. It's not hard to spec a reshingling of a roof. You know,
But is
it's
that
not
only what it needs? Is reshingling only what
It needs to be stripped and reshingled. You have leaks. That's really the
But
biggest.
doesn't it need more insulation?
Well, more insulation for energy conservation would be wonderful. My house could use more insulation for energy conservation. Yours might too. But are you doing it tomorrow? Maybe not. And if the payback's 20 years, you probably would say, I'll forego that. The insulation alone for this structure will cost over $280,000 installed. Just the insulation on the outside. And that's a real, I'm giving you the low side, not including fairing strips, nailer, foam insulation. It's expensive.
I don't think, we couldn't get a bid back out the door and done and mobilized and built before the end of the school summer. I don't think that's possible. You'd have to redo.
I've seen it done, but I mean, working with manufacturers, a specification for a shingle roof is not a difficult thing to do.
Right, just we'd have to get the architect and engineers to rewrite, put it back out on the street. And if it failed tomorrow, we'd still have to we'd have to go to another special to have it voted. So I'm just saying, I don't think we would make this summer.
Yeah. So we'd have to decide, and I don't know the answer to this, is what's leaking currently, and can that be repaired until next summer? And that's a question we have to ask. What is leaking currently, and can that be repaired? And I don't know the answer to that because I haven't seen the roof. And I didn't debate whether it needed a new roof or not. If you notice, I haven't said it doesn't need a new roof because all the experts have said it needs a new roof. And I'll take that as fact. It's a 25-year-old roof, at least on the main building. It's a 19-year-old roof on the addition. The band that they put in really was not a warrantyable shingle.
Right.
So, but just the warranties alone, as I said to you, this is, whether it lasts 25 or 30 years, it only comes with a 10-year warranty.
Okay.
Which is not what we were looking for when we talk about longevity. I was actually shocked that they didn't put in the specification a gold seal warranty on this, because that's really what it should have required to protect the taxpayers if they wanted this to be a 25 or 30-year-old guaranteed roof. Because the manufacturers are very clear, they call them lifetime limited warranties, and they're very clear on what the limited is, and it's defects. It is not poor workmanship. It is not physical damage. It is defects in their shingle, which is much different. So, all right. In a nutshell.
Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like there's any outcome that we're going to be able to have from our discussion, right? This is something that'll have to be discussed and settled at town meeting tomorrow.
We are meeting at 6 o'clock tomorrow, and the advisory committee is planning to meet also. They need to revote Article 5 on the budget, just because we made slight adjustments in 2 line items.
Right.
The same bottom line to fully fund the KP school budget request, and also to take another vote on the higher number for this, for Article 9. So, the board could ask to talk with them, and you could decide you wanted to take a different position than your previous Board of Selectmen took on the roof, in case anyone asks at town meeting. I mean, that's certainly an option that you have if you want to, or you could just stay the course as you are.
Is that a public meeting, though? Because we can't really deliberate and make or can we give a decision of the board at the advisory board meeting? You said we could take a different position. If the Board of Selectmen was to make a decision, it would have to be, again, an open session, right?
Right, so you're posted at 6, and I need to double check.
It is posted. It's an open meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Open
we
meeting
could actually
posted for
attend that.
both
Is that
boards.
correct?
Well, we have a meeting at 6
Yes.
outside of the advisory board's meeting.
Yes, I'm
correct?
not sure what
Right.
time they're posted for, but if
It's typically the same time.
Okay, so
Yep.
if the 3 of you wanted to revisit your position on Article 9, if that's important to inform the voters that something has changed, you could do that at your open meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
Or leave it as it is and speak to it individually. I mean, you have choices that way.
The issue is that we wouldn't be able to have it added to our agenda.
Right, I mean, we couldn't know you wanted to discuss it because we didn't discuss it until tonight.
Right.
You couldn't have been aware that this was an issue you wanted on your agenda.
The open meeting law allows you to take up issues which could not have been anticipated
Right.
48 hours in advance.
Yeah.
This wasn't anticipated, I would say you could discuss it even though it's not on the agenda.
Where will that 6 o'clock meeting be?
Great question.
It's typically in the library of Freeman Kennedy, with the advisory board being in that little conference room right next to
Freeman
you.
Kennedy or the middle school?
Middle school, sorry.
We've just been talking about school.
Right.
See, I was paying attention. You were just testing me.
Well, then I guess we'll take it up tomorrow.
Yeah. There's just some time. There's some thinking. It's a tough decision, but it's a big I mean, like I said, timing is horrendous for this as well.
Yeah.
I think if it was any other time, it might not be as concerning, but
Well, I think back a few months ago, they didn't know they were going to get into the program. So they teed it all up to do it. It was accepted. They moved forward. Here we are. And it's all got
and I think, looking forward, we got to, and I'm not the guy. I'm just a roofer. But there's a lot of bright people in this town who are engineers, who this is their forte. I mean, we have an owner in town who owns one of the largest roofing manufacturing sales companies in the country. We have engineers we know, Andy Basanowski, who's well versed in these type of things. We got to bring them in. I mean, this was done in a very closed circle, I think. And I don't even think you were involved in other than just seeing the final products.
Yeah, I mean, we received updates as we went down
and
the
you're not a
road,
roofer,
right.
and so I think we can now allow. This is the kind of stuff that, I hate to say it, has gotten us in trouble. We have a lot of experts in this town,
Well, yeah, I think
and I think we have to bring them into the party when we're putting together these proposals and thinking about where we want to go, so that we don't end up with one or two people with a vision going forward, and then not being really thinking about the whole, everybody.
The only thing I'll add is that the counterpoint is that I think a lot of really bright people actually worked on the project. I know you're saying we have a lot of bright people in town who weren't involved in the project, but we have a lot of bright people who volunteer their time who did work on the project. And I value their opinions too. So, and they did come to the table, right? They stepped up. So I don't want to impugn them. And I think that from what I've gathered, which again, the two of us learned a lot about this at the same 11th hour. And I think that to the degree that if there is sort of this sense of the past, sort of someone else's pocketbook, we're going to buy Gucci when we really only need the sports sack, then fine going forward. But what I think we have now is sort of a Hobson's choice, where we had some really careful thought with some copper issues. I don't know. I mean, I think it's worth more study tomorrow, but I don't know that my opinion is going to change. And maybe I do look silly on the floor tomorrow. That's fine. It will not be the first time that I look silly on town meeting floor. But
Is this a two-thirds vote?
yes, it's
For the roof-
at town meeting
at town
it'll be a
meeting, yeah.
two-thirds vote. But that brings me to my second question, because math. If there is a vote tomorrow and it's two-thirds for the board of that, hypothetically, and I'm not speaking for you, but just to play my unlearning, this is what this is about game. If we meet at 6 and my position remains unwavering and Chris's position remains unwavering, and I believe the past board's position was go forward with the roof.
Correct.
And if Kevin says he doesn't want to go forward with the roof, he wants to withdraw, study, whatever, that's the message. Does then the message get sent? Because I know it used to be with advisory, it'd be like four out of 7 of the advisory are, whatever,
Unfavorable.
find it unfavorable or favorable. Would then it be that the Board of Selectmen are in favor of pulling the article, or 2/3 of the Board of Selectmen? Right, and this is just like a learning moment for me. Maybe everybody,
It's my understanding that it's all or nothing. I didn't think that there was an identification of how the board voted.
So if I'm the sticky wicket, it goes down. Like it stays on the warrant.
Well, I don't know if we can necessarily decide that. I think we can
I mean, not the warrant. It stays on the warrant either
Well, so
way. But
in Norfolk, the advisory committee brings the motion. So they are teed up to bring the motion that's in your packet to the meeting tomorrow. And I would say, not having been to a Norfolk meeting, that if 2 of you do not want to go forward, then I think you need to advise the advisory committee, sorry about that, that's the feeling. But I don't know that you can pull it this point.
No, we
Right.
can't pull. I didn't mean to pull it. I meant if you had suggested that if the Board of Selectmen's opinion has changed, you could take a vote and then let town meeting know.
Yes.
If the vote is 2 to 1, math.
The majority of the board would prefer not to move
Right.
this project forward. And
Okay,
that's the
so
position.
the vote count would be what would be presented, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
the
and
majority.
if someone really wanted to ask which selectman wants to go forward.
Well, I mean, obviously,
then-
then I'm the one toddling down to the mic. I mean, I'm not going to be shy.
Right.
I don't think they are either. I mean,
No.
you know what I mean? Like, so
I think the moderator would consider that a fair question to know what's the
breakdown if
how
it's
is
not
the
unanimous?
board's, mind
I just was
changed
curious
and-
how, on any question, I was just using the roofing as an example. If the board was going to weigh in on a particular item, and it's not unanimous, which is good, right? It's good to not always be unanimous.
And
We talked
hopefully in
about
the
that.
future, things like this don't make it on the warrant because the selectmen ultimately set the warrant.
Right.
So the then board decided this should go forward and they put it on. Now,
Right,
here
and
we
that's
are.
to my other point, that to a degree, I know that there's a sense that you're trying to stop the flow or the hemorrhaging of money, but it was the prior board that was what got us to the point that we're at.
Yes.
And I think it's important from my perspective.
It will probably be a nice, healthy debate tomorrow.
Yep. And it's
Which
good
is
that
what's
lots of
good
people
about town
come.
meeting.
And yeah, I get it. Like whenever everybody gets up after the whatever they're interested in the whole right. There was the year where it was hunting
Mass
on their
exodus, yeah.
hunting on their land. Whatever. There's always that one hot button that gets everybody
Right.
there, and then you have to sort of wait till everybody leaves because the sound you can't hear anything, and that's annoying, right? Because the rest of us are there until the end with our high heels on and our feet are killing us, right? Chris, your high heels on. At the
My
end of the night.
heels, they always hurt.
Aggravating, but it is what it is, right? And it's good that people show up.
Well, not that it bears on the current conversation, but me personally, where I stand right now, I think it's very important in this role to be able to separate the things that impact you personally from what impacts the town that you represent. Me personally, there will be a Calcutt boy at HOD from now until 2026, at least one, right? So we're heavily invested in that school. But from Chris's point, I don't want to go down the road of just continuing to write check for things that are outlined for us by the state. If there's a path for us to be able to address the issues in the same time frame that we have outlined for this grant program that we've been working on for so long, I'd like to be able to explore that, to find out if there's a way that we can address the issues, ensure that the kids have a nice, dry, mold-free school to go to without having to go down a path of wasteful spending. I'm just not sure if I'm ready to chance throwing that away to be able to achieve that
Right.
with the point that we're at right now.
And I think you hit the nail on the head
Right.
because I absolutely am sympathetic to where you're coming from, but the timing is,
Right.
I don't think that we could, they worked incredibly
I
hard,
would
but
say
apropos of nothing.
Two
they worked
wrongs
incredibly
don't make
hard.
a right.
But we are now at
Remember
that
that.
hour where it's going to,
It might be helpful if one of you has a chance to talk to one of the school committee members or the superintendent to ask, if we do end up not going forward, what does that mean for any future MSBA funding for whatever project comes down the road? Will that put us in kind of a negative position with the
that's
MSBA?
interesting.
I don't have enough experience with them to say, but I would just like to be able to factor that into the thinking. I don't know I don't think we'll be able to consider MSBA cut for Freeman Kennedy expansion because Freeman Kennedy is too new. They wouldn't fund it anyway, but if there was a project down the road, does a sorry you couldn't get it over the finish line vote, for whatever reason, good or bad, mean anything different to future projects? I don't know.
And don't forget, we have paid them. We have given them money to do this specification. So at the end of the day, no one but the taxpayers have lost to date.
Right.
We've paid these organizations.
Yes.
We paid Gale Associates and we paid the state agency. So no one's out any money except for the taxpayers right now.
That's true.
So
I understand.
I don't think they're going to look at us and say, oh, you led us down the path and then you pulled it. They got paid for their work.
No, I mean
So-
future MSBA grants.
But again, it's a needed, I guess if I was the devil's advocate, I'd say next year if we come forward with a different proposal, did our school become any less needy? No.
But there
People a
are
year ago
potentially
thought-
other
People thought
schools-
we were needy a year ago.
that might get
But
ahead
there
of us.
might
There's
the
a lot
other
of
schools that
are
get ahead of
that
us,
don't get the funding
and then
because they don't apply for the grants. There's a lot of schools.
And
You go
there's
to
the
Worcester,
increase in
Every
the-
building in Worcester leaks. Every single school in Worcester leaks.
And it's
Constant.
It's my understanding too that the previous requirement for the grant program was that your roof had to be 20 years old, and then they just upped that to 25 because the
years.
number of schools.
Yeah.
What happens if they up that to 30 the next time around?
and then you also have the incremental increase in construction over 1 year.
Again, if a $1.2 million project is going to cost the taxpayers $2.4 million to do it this way, to me, it doesn't make much sense.
I understand.
Regardless, it is a roof.
Yeah.
It is a roof. And remember, it's water tightness. You got to almost draw it down to your own home. What would you do if you had a leak in your house? And I've talked to this about Matt. Same thing with the fire station, police station. They had a roof leak. They chose not to fix it. If we have a roof leak, fix it or replace the section. Don't just let it leak so that at some future time you can say, and we heard it for 2 years, it leaked. That building leaked down there. It could be stopped leaking. I've made a profession for the last 30 years, stopping leaks in buildings. It's doable, and I'm not the only one. Greenwood does it too every day, the one who bid on this job. So I think that's what you got to look at it as if it was your own home, and what would you do if you had a roof leak? You would call the contractor, you'd ask for a roofing price. If he came back to you and said, we're going to replace your fascia boards, your soffits, your gutters, we're going to put in more insulation, we're going to rebuild your rafters, he may not be, you may go, whoa, I thought I was getting a new roof. I wasn't getting a building envelope restoration. And that's what this is. It's a very good restoration. The spec is perfect. I wouldn't do it any differently if I was doing a building envelope restoration. I don't think the taxpayers in Norfolk were thinking about this. They were thinking about a new roof because it leaks. That's it. So I think we have to, that should be the focus.
Okay, well, that was incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. I appreciate the professional insight. Anybody have anything else on the roof? No? Okay. Good. Next item, something a little more cheery, the Lauryn Street Bridge project. That was sarcasm. That was very sarcastic.
When is that?
The Lauryn Street Bridge project has been running since August of last year. The project was to take that bridge that runs across and do a full replacement of the bridge. The footings of the bridge were crumbling. The width of the bridge wasn't adequate, and pending a potential development on the other side, there was concerns about two-way traffic and safety. So we got a grant for the bridge. Actually, we got 2 grants for the bridge to be able to fully replace the bridge. We were to begin in August. It was quoted to be closed for 90 days with completion in November. What happened was there were a couple of issues as it related to slope clearing. The DEP got involved. They needed to do an assessment of the bridge. There needed to be some delays associated to that. There was work order stoppages that were put into place to be able to allow them to do their work. There was some habitat issues. There were things that needed to be assessed that weren't projected in the beginnings of the project. And also, weather came into play as well as we went past that November date. Fast forward to where we are right now. Currently, we are set to reopen the road on 5/24. This has been a very big inconvenience for the residents on the other side of that bridge as it pertains to the school buses having to go all the way around that Franklin side to get over there, and basically any other mode of transportation that connects them to town. I started working directly with DEP upon the departure of Jack Hathaway, so I inherited the project itself and took a more proactive role in communicating with residents and posting more project-oriented milestone timelines up onto the website, and to have weekly meetings with Green International, who's the consultant, and Mass, the contractor. There have been a couple of different impact items as we've gotten close to the home stretch here, but our contract end date with them is 5/31. So if we do end up having to go past that, which we were in very big fear of doing with the rain that we've had over the last couple of weeks that kept us from being able to appropriately pave the road, but I do believe that we were able to get the pavers in on Saturday of this past weekend. So we look like that 5/24 date is going to hold true. So that is in the home stretch. I believe they just have to put up some guardrails and finish up the balusters along that boardwalk. I don't know if either of you had the opportunity to go down there, but it does look very nice. And we are very much looking forward to that being completed. We don't anticipate that there's going to be any long-standing issues or other items that are going to go past the end of the project. I believe we were talking about a slope mitigation that's going to be taking place, that's going to be pushing over to that shore by the Buckley Man area, pending testing on the Buckley Man site. But that should be the only thing that we're going to be talking about past the completion of this project. Long project, lots of issues, lots of frustration, but we're in the home stretch. And hopefully by the time next week comes around, the following week, we'll be able to say that we're done with it.
Just one thing, Dad, I talked to Bob McGee today. The paving that was done on Saturday was the binder coat. They're going to wait to do the finished paving until probably in July.
But we're going to do it.
And we're going to do it just to make sure that there's no, if there's any settling, anything like that just may happen, that we're waiting to do that. It's drivable in its current condition with just the binder and the guardrails and I think the walkway.
Yep.
Those are the things that are key to the May 24th date.
Right.
But it's not the final paving. So you'll see castings get raised and some of the things that happen for that later in the summer.
When you say we're going to do it, the town's going to do it?
We're going to contract for it. We don't do that paving ourselves.
Right.
We don't have that.
But doesn't the current contract call for a finished coat?
It does. It's just the.
So what are we going to do, back it out of the contract with the
I didn't ask.
Fine. That's my understanding of what
I
we're
didn't
doing.
ask Bob that specific question from the financial perspective, but
I think we need to know that. We've got to know what we're going to back out
Yep.
at what cost, because Bob McGee gets his asphalt probably cheaper than the contractor. So we
yeah,
want to
he
back
has a
out.
contract for all the types of paving he does this year. That's bid, I think, every year.
Yeah, but I'm saying his cost is probably less than the contractor who's actually bid to pave it originally.
So your question is that what is he backing
What
out?
are we backing
Yeah.
out? What are we removing from the
That's a good question.
contractor and reimbursing to the taxpayer?
Good question.
So you'll be shutting down July then because of finished coat in July?
I don't know what the projection looks like for closing the
I mean, if
road.
they were able to do the binder coat in one day, I'd like to think that the
They could-
finish
Talking
coat
about
could be.
heat and impact from driving on it, that's all.
There'll have to be some point at which it's closed for some period, a day or two,
Yeah.
to just do that.
Right.
They can pave it in one day. They've got a
Yeah.
20, they've got a, I was down there Saturday, they've got a 24-inch wide, and I think the town can contract with 24-foot wide for paving.
Yeah, I didn't ask the details of exactly
I
how
just
we
think we
make it
gotta know
out.
Unless they
what
have
we're
3 days
pulling
of
out.
110-degree
Yeah,
weather.
what are we pulling out
Then
of
it
the
melts.
contract?
And then nobody's driving over
No, it's a
it
good
until
question.
it's...
Yeah. What are we
Cook
pulling?
eggs, but nothing else.
We can all go down and put our initials in it. We wouldn't do, because that would be wrong.
Anything else on Lauryn Street Bridge?
No.
Take a look at the seglets that are running around down there with their parents.
Turtles get them.
Those are the baby swans.
Oh,
For
The
those of you
cygnets?
who don't know, yes, they were just hatched, so they're running around. So you'll get a good view of them
Until they get eaten by turtles.
if they don't get hit by a car.
Yikes.
The circle of life.
All right, so that's a good segue into the next item, which we have listed as the Abbeville 40B. Chris, would you like to lead us through this one?
Very good hit by a car. As of Friday, the DEP told Mabbitt, who was the LSP for Tom DePlacido, that he would not be given an extension and that he had to provide all the data he had with regard to PCBs and any other information with regard to their LSP's testing. They did meet that date because they were not given the extension. It is now a public record at DEP. It is not good news. The owner of the property and their counsel has hired their own LSP to check, verify, recheck. They have come up with different conclusions. So the next stage will be obviously to see what DEP does with that data. My assumption is they will require additional testing out there, and we'll go from there. DePlacido is still, he would still like to work with the town, would still like to work with the owners of that property. He'd still like to work with the neighborhood. Obviously, if there is a risk of contaminants up there, town water becomes very important to that community. And right now, we don't have town water there. And with Cranberry Heights not going forward, this was the only project that was going to bring water there. So we're sort of in a wait and see, but as of Friday, the data was presented to DEP, and the PCBs are at some of the testing at the river, at the landfill from the cloth that's used in the manufacturing is much higher elevation than what is allowed.
So my understanding of how that process went, we did a split testing with an LSP that we had. And
Correct.
Their
Weston
LSP,
Sampson.
so their LSP's results that were just released confirmed our LSP's findings as well?
Yeah, I mean, theirs was actually even greater amounts.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
even greater amount. Our LSP only had some small hits. Their LSP actually had some very large hits.
Gotcha.
When
Okay.
it came to PCBs. Some very, to a point of where it may actually get the EPA involved,
Wow.
that high. So,
Would that make it eligible for brownfields? Would that make it eligible for a brownfields grant?
I guess, at this point, I think because it's still an open public meeting with the zoning board of appeals, I think I would hold off on expressing that opinion. But it's going to require some cleanup, obviously. So we'll wait for DEP to make a decision as to how they want to move forward.
Sure.
But yeah, we have some. We will, as hopefully in the next year, probably have some real concerns about how we move forward on that project and what we do.
I will say that as part of the Lauryn Street Bridge project, we did bring water at least across the bridge.
Correct.
So water will be at least that far, but that's not the real cost. The real cost is bringing it all the way up to.
Yeah, it's another 2,500 feet to bring it down Lauryn Street to, I think it's Brett Farm Road, which would be the end of the line, per
Right.
se. And then you've got all the side streets, so it's and it's an 8-inch water main. So it's infrastructure work, obviously digging up the road, repaving. So significant costs.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, what does that do with the buildup of the pending applications for 40Bs and the ones sitting in queue behind it? I mean, these guys are going on 2 years at this point. It's come September.
Which chairman are you asking?
Yeah, I was about to say, I'll defer to the more appropriate chairman for that one.
It is,
I was being appropriate for correcting the
I'll let Jeff talk.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I have asked the developer that he has got to provide the board with a letter from Mass Housing as to his status at the next zoning board meeting. In other words, does he have control of the Abbeville site as it's owned by the Mann family? And if he doesn't have control of that site, he no longer, obviously that 40B is no longer functioning. He does have site control of the LaRusso property, and which he's talked
Is that
about.
the larger piece?
No, that would be the smaller piece.
Okay.
But, and I told him that if he is going to pursue that, he has got to provide the board with a letter from Mass Housing
It's a modification.
if they would accept it as a modification.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's really a lot of paperwork that has to be filed prior to the next zoning board meeting on that subject matter to make sure that he has site control and/or he has approval from Mass Housing to move forward.
Wasn't there a discussion that he was going to abandon the rental portion of it and have it all for sale? Therefore, why have two applications clogging the queue
Right.
versus
And
one?
we have told him that he is teetering very strongly on one application, and that at the next meeting, we have to have some clarification as to where he's at. And since we just closed one 2 weeks ago, we will probably have 2 spots open, and we have one for.
Obviously compromising our ability to put affordable housing on the books.
Yep.
And therefore putting Safe Harbor at risk again.
Right. Yep.
Thank you, both gentlemen.
Is that helpful?
Very much so. Thank you. Chris, Cece, do you have any questions on Abbeville?
No.
All right. I feel like I've been talking for a long time. Blythe, you want to take us through the next bullet and your assessment items?
Sure. So I just had provided some, immediate issues of things we want to keep on the horizon, things that are coming up that are important for the long term. First is that we have two positions in DPW that are significant. We have not filled a highway supervisor position. I don't know exactly how long that's been open, but that's a key position that has gone unfilled for a little while. And in July, the staff person in charge of vehicle maintenance and transfer stations also retiring, a long-term employee, and we're starting the recruitment for that. Right now, it's wonderful that the economy is doing well, but hiring people into those positions, there doesn't seem to be anybody to promote up within the department, and haven't had much success with advertising for them and recruiting people to us. So we're going to try some different strategies on that and get that going, because not long after that, we need to start to think about the replacement of the director, who is retiring about a year from now. So it will come sooner than we would like, but it is something that we're going to have to keep our eye on and plan for. Just want to be aware of that. I think that there's some work to do in the area of human resources. We have a pay and classification plan that has not been updated in a number of years, and I think that's good housekeeping that we should budget for and do at some point, and figure out the timing of that relative to union contracts where we have unionized positions that are covered, some are not. We have fairly, I think our increases in our overall pay rates across the board are a little higher than most communities. In some cases, they may be very warranted, and like we talked about with fire earlier, but as an across-the-board increase overall, I think it's something we should give some thought about and do some work on. And also how we manage our whole HR function is something that I've spent a little time talking with the schools about. I'm not at this point ready to make any recommendations, but I think that there's ways we can look at that and how the work is divided, who's responsible for what, that may be beneficial. Certainly 40B projects are very high priority in town, and so I want to make sure that all the departments are supporting those efforts and what's needed to bring those to their logical conclusion, whatever they may be. I hope that, Chris, you and I will talk more about that as we go forward. And then I'm also very interested in working with planning and other boards to figure out how we move forward the efforts that have started on the town center and economic development. That's, I don't have a clear path of exactly what we want to do, but I think it's going to take a several-pronged approach, from possible zoning changes that make sense and trying to work with the businesses that we have and perhaps encourage others. I'm not sure if you're all aware, but Norfolk is part of the 495 partnership. It's a partnership of businesses and communities along 495, and Norfolk has been has been in that group since its founding. They don't have a large staff, but they do offer economic development services, and it might be something we can reach out to and take benefit from. So it was nice that I knew the director from my time in Upton. He actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, you're back in the club." So I think we can find some opportunities there, I hope, to work with us. So those are the things that are on my mind. And on the back of the list, I just gave you kind of my, not in a particular order, but some things that occurred to me in my first 60, God, not 60, it's actually 30 days. Not sure how we got to 60, but I think some of the things that are strong about our organization and how we do things and what we offer to residents and things that we could work on. Certainly, community engagement has come up several times, and I'm glad it's come up. I'm sorry it has, but I'm glad it's an opportunity, things we can work on. I think we have to work on, think about our tax rate over time and what we can do to mitigate that. I think there's various ways to approach that. And then things that I want to work on with various staff people, clearly the fire station. We've got to think about Freeman Kennedy. The school has a plan that they'd like to move forward with. They'd like to have design funds as early as this fall. So that's something that's going to come pretty quickly down the path. And then we don't currently have a capital improvement program. The finance director is working on that, because the next time we go to market, the rating agency will be looking for it. But we should have one anyway, and we should have a plan for when every roof needs to be considered to be replaced, and every truck, and every HVAC unit, so that maybe we can't fund absolutely everything we think we need in every year, but we know when it's coming, and we can do our best to plan for it and mitigate the impact on taxpayers, or at least not have it spike up because we didn't think about something. I'm not saying we haven't done that, but I want to make sure we're planning for the future. And one of those important things is road funding. Bob McGee sent me today earlier a pavement management plan they did 10 years ago that needs to be updated.
Yeah.
And that will help us understand how much more we should be putting into roads. Start to put into roads and get to a point where we're not losing ground, at least keeping up, if not making progress at some point. So these won't all be accomplished in the next 6 months, but they're things that occur to me. And as we go forward, the four of us, I'm interested in knowing what things I might not have put on the list are important that you've thought of. And at some point, we'll start to prioritize what are we going to try to tick off first, second, concurrently over the next year. So it was just food for thought.
Oh, thank you for putting it together. It's really helpful to get somebody with an outside perspective to be able to reflect on these kind of things, especially in a short amount of time. For 30 days, just felt like 60 days. My apologies for titling it that way. So that's the end of the recap of bringing everybody up to speed. Those are the big things that we felt were in front of everybody that required some background or some minor discussion, question and answer periods or whatnot. Is there anything that wasn't included there that anybody would like to bring up or discuss?
No, we have a lot of good issues.
Just a technical question. If, so I know that in the June 4 meeting that we're going to start talking about appointments. If I'm on the Board of Assessors, and I researched it, I don't have to step down from that board, but if I decide that makes sense, and I think I have someone that I think the board, not that I've spoken to them yet, right, because I want to know what the rules are, that I think I have somebody who how do you go about that, right? Do I add the Board of Assessor position to the list, and then it's let's play the hypothetical game again.
The rule is when there's an opening in a elected board and it couldn't have been filled at the election, then there's an opening until the next election, and it requires a joint meeting between that board, in this case the assessors, and the selectmen to elect someone to fill that until the next election. How we go about determining who gets put forward is, I think, a decision. It's unique to each community. Whether Norfolk's history has been that people submit their names to the assessors and they kind of vet them and bring them forward, or both boards try to come up with names and have the joint meeting and put forth names and vote on them and debate them, is something I actually not sure I can answer as well.
Right. So we have a meeting, and I'm sure it's going to be posted. I think it's in a week, next Wednesday, I think. And I'll sort of ruminate around with them then. I mean, I don't want to leave anybody high and dry. So if I hadn't won Selectmen, I would have stayed on the Board of Assessors. I'm not sure if it's a good use of time, because I think this board's going to require so much attention to be on both, but I don't want to leave anybody high and dry. So I wanted to make sure
if you're resigning, you'll submit a letter to the town clerk. She'll send a notice that says there's a vacancy, and cite the law, state law, that says how you go through this, what I just told you. And then we'll have to set a joint meeting date in order to have the joint election. And then, so the question I would have about that and any volunteer positions is, do you think we want to have a formal process, or some towns have a volunteer application on the website, hey, turn this in and whatever you'd like to serve on, and we'll just put them on.
We used to have that. There used to be, you could go to the website, and also Norfolk Net had like a drop down, and they have, I know they have the volunteer fair, but I think that more specifically people, like I know when I was moving in town, like I was 6, you go and noodle around and there was definitely something on the website.
I know from my experience, if I went to somebody and they were like, hey, I'm really interested in joining this committee or this board, how do I do it? Like, oh, just fill out a letter of intent or a letter of interest and send it into the town clerk. They're like, letter of interest? What are you talking about? I don't want to go on that.
Well, my recollection of the website was it was just like you could print, you could fill it out and just email.
Yeah.
So that was a while ago. So
for the board's appointments, they could send them to Nancy and I, and we'll give you every single application we get and what they're interested in, and you can determine the process by which you want to decide who you're going to appoint. You want to have them in to meet them on camera. You want to have one of you be in charge of chatting with them over the phone. What way is best for this board to decide who it wants to appoint? It's really a question for you rather than, and staff will make sure we support that, whatever that is.
I'm trying to think back to how it worked in the last cycle.
Most experienced.
Yeah. That's everybody level set on expectations there for a second.
We have.
Yeah, good. I'm glad we already got there. That's good. If memory serves, I believe that we just got a 4-page list that just had each person that needed to be reappointed, because I don't believe we had a situation where there were multiple people expressing interest for the same position. Now, that could have been just a rare occurrence, or that could have been something that was done previously by the other boards and committees, but
I mean, we could put something up on the website that says, hey, the selectmen have these positions are coming up for reappointment.
Right.
If you're interested, send us an email, a phone call, a something that.
Maybe like a
I
little
think
blurb that
that's
says what those
nice,
committees and
because-
boards do, so that people would
Because
have
I
a
think
better
people
understanding.
don't necessarily know, and while we could all sort of sit back and opine that you should know to go to this or that, life intervenes, and if you can find ways of sort of alerting people, hey, listen, here's the 16 opportunities, and maybe it never occurred to you to become involved, and maybe you look at the list and you think, oh, that's actually something that interests me. I kind of like the idea of the nationwide search.
Yeah, I also want to ask Sue and Nancy whether there's a process to reach out to the folks whose term would be coming up and say, do you want to continue on whatever the board? Or, hey, you're good, you want to go do something else in life. We know there's a clear vacancy, or we know that Mrs. Smith still wants to stay on even, and then your discussion is whether
we keep-
to reappoint Mrs. Smith
Right.
or pick somebody else.
Somebody else, right? Yeah, that's a
So
good point.
I'll ask about that.
An announcement at tomorrow's town meeting would be very useful about
Sure.
this, so that people become aware of what positions there are. And
Oh, that's a great idea. Can we
Does
do
the
that?
moderator kind of give some latitude for that?
I think that under the article where committees are reporting,
Right,
Oh.
that's right.
that would be a great.
That'd be
That's a
great
good idea.
so the board could just come up with that list.
Aren't those always posted on the bulletin board out here? I've seen them before.
Yeah, but I just am wondering if there's a way to, for people who don't come into.
This way,
They really are.
I mean, I know it's not the biggest
Yeah.
town
They really aren't,
in the
though.
world,
When you
but
think about it, there's a number of positions in town that aren't posted, that are awarded. I mean, I'm one of them, animal inspector. There's no memo put on the board. Anybody interested in becoming an animal inspector, please apply here.
who likes critters? Raise your hand.
There's no, it's just,
Right. I'm just saying that's a way we could think.
right, so what we should do is put it
To do-
out there.
right.
These are coming up.
Sort of
And what are the credentials?
hearkening back to that
Because certain
transparency
positions have
thing.
credentials.
Well, this list that's in your
so that's-
packet from the clerk's office is a great start
Yeah,
to get you familiar with what ones are
Right.
yours.
That's this one.
Yep.
yep.
And it goes through absolutely every.
We're peach, right?
I think you're peach. You're peach or pink. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
Public safety building, yeah, we're peach. Well, it's like an ecru, right? It's a Scrabble word right there. So it starts at Affordable Housing Trust and runs through Zoning Working Committee, right? Does that sound right?
B1 Zoning Working Committee?
Just zoning work.
Yeah, I think
Peach.
that's
Yep.
been disbanded, I think, the zoning working committee.
Yep.
The committee formerly known as the
I've got
zoning.
it.
It's a symbol
Committee
now, yeah.
formerly known.
Oh, it's just a sign now.
I was on it. We've been disbanded. We lost our stripes.
It's a
I
sad,
will
Sad,
check with Carol.
sad day.
She's going under the knife tomorrow, but I'll check with her office.
That's right, her shoulder surgery. Ugh. poor
So.
thing.
So if an announcement is going to be made at the town meeting, who would be the most appropriate person to make it?
Probably that guy, right?
Thank you, Jen.
Oh, you're very welcome. So we'll have a list generated of anything or everything that we can.
Yeah, I think if you make an announcement, say, look at, hopefully everyone subscribes to news and announcements on our website, because we're going to be posting a list there and other places of openings that we have, or either for boards that we fill, and we would love letters of interest or resumes or whatever you'd like to give us to tell us you'd like to serve.
Gotcha.
So we can take them up. And we'll put together something for the website.
Perfect, thank you.
If you wanted to put together a one-page thing that you put out on the table, that would probably be good too, but.
Let me see how tomorrow goes. You might have heard there's a town meeting
Yeah.
tomorrow. Want to make sure all the presentations are right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think what you want to do, David, is put out a partial list, because that might be a mistake. You want to make sure it's inclusive of all of them, because, if you put out partial and you start adding to it, people are going to start to get
Yeah.
confused. So you want to make sure it's comprehensive.
It sounds
I
like we
think
have
we'll
to do a
start
little
with an
discovery before we
announcement
get
and
there.
work our
Yeah,
way
yeah.
up from there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, anything else before we close out the first portion of our workshop? Items that are out there, things of concern, things to discuss. All right.
I'd like to say that I found this very valuable. I very much appreciate the opportunity to sit here, and I found it extremely informative. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. The next portion, goal setting. I don't think that the intent was really to sit here and hash out what our goals are going to be for next year in one sitting. I think what I was more looking to do was kind of just go over a format that I feel worked for us last year, and also to kind of leave everybody with the homework to take it back and kind of stew on things that are important to you and things that you'd like to see done and prioritize over the course of the next year. And then we can collaborate on bringing that all together for one cohesive, glorious outline for the next year. Very basic. The structure includes a high-level subject matter, a distinct function or target, and then supporting objectives that would contribute to achieving said goal. This is very basic in nature. I didn't go into a million sub-goals for one title. I didn't go into all the crazy numbering that one could do. Really just wanted to try to keep it as basic and simple as possible. As you can see, I put in updates here for where we landed on some of the items that I had listed, but I'm more than open to listening to other ideas about format or adjustments that anybody would want to discuss.
Nope, I think it's great. We should have goals, and we should prioritize them. And I think and we'll give Blythe 9 months. We won't
there a
do it in
key?
60 days. We'll get it done in 9 months.
Do we have like a color key?
There was not a color key per se. For this, I was just doing green for completed, yellow for in process, red for
Yeah.
we're
I
not
think
good
it's
at our
great.
jobs.
We should have goals.
So red is what?
Was not touched, was not
Okay.
done, there was no work really done towards it.
And I think David brought to light, I think he sent us all the same memo, was, some of the things he learned during the election process that we should incorporate, when we're doing this.
I already printed 'em off.
I think we all heard the same thing. And you heard it last year, too.
Yep.
So we should incorporate those because that's the taxpayers' will.
I think one of the best things about having this in place was being able to benchmark and identify, hey, where has progress really been made and where are there opportunities that still lie? Previously, we were looking at outlines that just had reduced debt. Make sure this gets done. Do some work to make sure this gets pushed through. And I wanted to make sure that we were giving ourselves some tangible targets to work towards.
Well, we just heard it from Blythe. We have a paving plan that has been out of date. We have an HR plan out of date.
Yeah.
We have a capital plan, non-existent. Those are 3 huge items.
Yeah.
2 of the 3, I can imagine, will be on our priority list, and they're all out of date. So
Absolutely.
perfect to the point.
All right, so we'll take this back and we'll talk about where we are at our next meeting. Does that sound good?
Great.
In the interest of transparency, I'd encourage you to put as much of that on the website as you possibly can, because I'd like citizens in Norfolk to see what your goals are.
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree.
With a color key. I'm just kidding.
I don't have the fancy peach colors and everything. I got to expand a little bit.
I don't know if I love the peach, though. I'm going to be honest.
I'll
Kind of
talk with
anemic.
Carol and say we want a better color.
Did you see she was promoted to apparently being in charge of communications for the town? Jesus Christ. No, Carol.
All right, the last item on our list are liaison assignments. When I joined the board last year, I was told these are the liaisonships that Scott had. They're now yours. I wanted to make this a little bit more inclusive. I wanted people to kind of work towards areas that they had interest in or they felt that they had relative experience to, that they'd be able to contribute a little more than just sitting in on a meeting and giving a brief update as to how the meeting went. So I wanted to open it up. We have a number of committees in town that we have liaison responsibilities to. And so if there was any or were any that anybody had a real tie to or had a real interest in, I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to be able to work with those people. Chris, is it safe to say that you'll work with the ZBA?
I will work with the ZBA.
Beautiful. And you'll be at every meeting, too. That's great. That's dedication. Cece, anything out there that generally interests you? You don't have a list of the committees, do you?
Nope. Oh, I do not.
That's the one
Rats.
thing I did not print. I'm sorry.
Anne Marie and I both would like to know what's on that list.
It's basically all the elected boards
Yeah.
that we,
Well, I guess I'll stay on
as
the
a conduit
assessments.
to be able to have, and some appointed, like ZBA, that where there's significant work to be done.
One question that did come up while I try to find the outline was the question of having town departments be part of the liaisons. Departments like police, fire, DPW, these departments lie within the liaison lists, and a selectman previously had been assigned to those departments. But in discussions with Blythe, we were wondering if having operational departments have a selectman liaison like an appointed committee does makes a lot of sense, given that, as an operational department, your point of contact should be the operations director, or in this case, Blythe. So I wanted to put that out there to get your feelings on it. Do you feel that having a selectman be assigned to these town departments is something of value, or do you believe that filtering that to a single point of contact from an operations standpoint is more relevant?
So have we done that consistently? Had someone liaise with fire and police?
Correct.
Well, then I think it should be Blythe, because I'm of the opinion that as much as that these are people that work, with us for the town, there is sort of a sense of not necessarily accountability with it being the Board of Selectmen liaison. And I think somebody I'm sorry to add to your plate, and you could be like, no, stop it. Shh. I think that someone who's as strong as Blythe is, who has her background, is a great person to be like, well, where is everybody, right? That's, I think I overheard her, I didn't overhear it, somebody reported to me her explaining to people her role versus the Board of Selectmen's role, and I loved it. And it was, she said, I'm going to misquote you and I apologize, and please correct me, I'm the day government, they're the night government.
I love it.
And
you got it just right.
And that's right? I'm in Boston at my day job, and if somebody who is albeit a professional, is ostensibly working for me and for the town, is never at their desk, I'm not going to know it. But Blythe is. So that would be my opinion.
How does that play into your strong, like you mentioned, strong chief, like our fire department?
So if you look at the appointments list, you're actually the police commissioners, all three of you. And you're probably the Board of Fire Engineers.
That I've never
get a
heard
hat?
of. Police commissioners,
I knew I
sworn in
got-
for that.
I knew I got a
Chapter 40,
badge.
42 is the strong fire chief, and 42A is the weak chief. The difference is that strong chief has appointing authority directly to their staff and can manage that and deal with issues that come up, and they report directly to the board. So you can derive to me the ability to manage it day to day on your behalf, or you can keep it, whichever you prefer.
Right.
For both
I got it.
police and fire. The other departments are appointed by me with your approval. So a perfect example, a new DPW director next year will go through a process. I'll make a recommendation, and you'll decide you agree or you disagree. But police and fire are a little different, so I don't want that to be lost.
There are only two strong positions in town, aren't they?
Police and fire.
Right, we have no other strong.
We do not. There are
Okay.
no other sections of the law that allow for differences like that in
Right.
finance or
Right.
others.
Building. Yeah,
But the
that's
weak
right.
be strong does not mandate that it's a Board of Select person liaison. It can be.
It does not.
It can be you.
It's more a matter of the preference of the community. In my previous community, it was very clear the selectmen wanted to manage the police chief and the fire chief directly. They had meetings with the chairman had meetings with the chiefs, did all those sorts of things separately. Here, you may choose to do it differently.
Gentlemen?
As I said during the election, we're the board of directors. You're the president of the company.
Yeah.
We meet with them, and
That's right.
we'll make the decisions, but you bring to us your recommendations.
And it doesn't mean that you don't ask them questions and things you need to know. You certainly can do that through me, and I'll get them for you. And we'll just have to create that working relationship that's best here.
As long as there are donuts involved, I can do meetings.
Any particular flavor?
All donuts.
Peach.
No, what is that, David? Peach, that's ridiculous.
So I'm not sure if that requires a vote of any kind.
No.
It just is an understanding as terms of where assignments lie, right?
It depends on how formal you want to be as a board. I mean, if you're more comfortable voting it so it's clear that it was a decision at a meeting to go in this direction rather than that, you could. Or if you're comfortable with it being understood, debated at a meeting. I think it's a matter of, again, this is what you have to decide how you want to operate. I've seen communities do it both ways, so I don't want to tell you one is absolutely right and one's wrong.
You're the chair, Chief.
I say we do it in an open meeting, make it formal, personally.
And maybe you want to think about it a little bit more and then decide it, if you're working tonight, we didn't post these things for a
Right.
vote.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm in for our next meeting, absolutely.
Right, yeah,
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so that takes care of town departments. I think it would be best if we got a full list out to everybody and then
I think
went
that
through.
makes sense.
Instead of trying
I'll
to
get
poke
that out
around
in
and
the
guess what's available.
You asked
searching
me
for the
what I
email and I'm not
was interested
finding it.
in, and other than having volunteered earlier in the evening for the safety building board, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, but I'm more than happy to wait for the list for whenever.
Well, luckily, there is no pressing issues related to being a liaison for any of the committees that are out there right now, so we're all
Relieved.
good. While we talked about Cece being appointed to the building committee as a selectman's representative, I did feel important to call out that I am the selectman's appointee to the B1 zoning working committee, which is working with MAPC on some zoning regulation changes that we could be proposing in the fall to be able to accommodate for a more distinct and focused vision for town center. We did have a community feedback session already. We did have a survey out there that was posted online and we got some great feedback on. And I think we're at the point right now where we're really just kind of honing in on what that recommendation is going to look like while leaning on the professionals from the state to help us with what's feasible and what's not.
And again, I would suggest talk to some of the professionals
Absolutely.
in the community. Tommy DePlacido, he has a lot available on River's Edge for a 150-foot restaurant, 150-seat restaurant. He's well-versed in that type of development, amazingly well-versed. I spent 4 hours with him on Saturday discussing it and what the pros and cons of that type of structure development would be. I'm sure there's others. We should really tap into that if we can, because they have a lot of experience in this area.
Yeah.
And again, I was at that last presentation, and as you remember, I saw 10-foot wide sidewalks, I saw pretty trees, and I saw park benches. That's not going to cut it, and that's not going to bring development. It's pretty and it's cute, but we need some serious infrastructure in order to make that happen. So as we're honing in on those, I would certainly advise talking to people who do this and have a vested interest here. So they sort of have looked at it, and he's certainly one individual who has done a lot of research on our town center, obviously with this building next door.
Yep.
And other lots of land in the center of town. So I think we should tap into that as you move forward on that.
Absolutely. I believe he was at the community feedback session as well.
He was.
If I'm not mistaken.
He was.
All right. Well, we'll put off the liaison assignments until we can get a full list out to everybody, so we'll make that part of our next meeting as well. Blythe, are there any more selectman appointee or selectman representative to boards that are out there that I'm not aware of?
There are a couple in the bylaws that where or in some of the trusts where the chairman is automatically the person appointed, like the OPEB Trust Committee. I'm pretty sure that just got voted. I'm pretty sure it says the chairman of the board, but I need to double check those.
Gotcha. Okay.
Plugging in the selectmen meeting at 6 p.m. so I do not forget.
Municipal Affordable Housing Trust as well.
Yeah, I know there's more than one. I just
That's not designated as the chairman, though. That's an appointee.
No, how did the chairman get designated for a committee? I'm just curious.
I'm not advocating for it.
No, what I'm saying is, how did we look at it? That's a brand new thing. I don't remember it being a
I think it's the chairman advisory, the chairman of selectmen, the treasurer, the town administrator, and the finance director.
Oh, we did that at town meeting?
No, we did it one of my first meetings here. It was approved. That's something we do need to spend a time talking about, our liability for that. Actually, probably should have put it on the list. It's about $21 million if we weren't able to pre-fund it, that we haven't set aside any money for yet. It's the, back in the 90s, the town accepted the section of the state law that provides retiree health insurance benefits to town employees who retire with a vested in a pension. And so when they retire, they can choose that for themselves and their spouse throughout the rest of their life. And 50% is paid of the cost monthly is paid by the town. 50% is paid by the employee for them and their spouse. And so every couple of years, an actuarial evaluation is done to determine how many people do we have, how old are they, what's their life expectancy, what are the costs of the plans. And our current valuation is, if we were able to pre-fund it tomorrow, just write a check, it's about $13 million. But since we don't have anything
Right.
set aside, then the unfunded liability is $21 million. So one of the first steps is having a trust in place, and then in future budgets, we need to try to start to put aside some of that money.
Todd was talking about that.
Yeah. Every community has this problem. Almost all communities. I think there's one city that I just read about that has actually gotten to fully funding. Most are in
I think he was showing me his plan.
similar
He was like,
situations
"I'm
to
gonna
us,
move
and so we
this,
just need to
I'm gonna
start
move
working
this."
on
Right.
it. Or the state needs to change the law to make it, make the bar a little higher to get over to get that benefit, like they did with pensions in 2012. So,
Interesting.
Fun things to come.
Yeah.
So
Every
the last
$1 million counts.
yes, sir, it does.
Every $1 million counts.
So the last item we had to talk about tonight was any town meeting prep that was left out there, things that needed to be decided on, any kind of direction we needed to align on before we got to the Great Hall tomorrow. I know one of the items out there were recognitions. Is that
Yes,
correct?
thank you. Yeah. I have nothing on the slide, so I can either take the slide off, because I understand from Jay, he's going to recognize people who have passed, so we don't need to worry about them. So from that list we sent around, is there anyone that the board wants to have the chair get up and say something about, or this year isn't notable and we're going to not do that and wait till another time?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of prior years. I mean, I think of Jack McFeely, but I don't know, did we do a big spiel? I think we did it. But that was somebody who served on a number of different boards.
Right.
I mean, I think you want to, I think I like the idea of just listing the names or showing them
Right.
on a slide. And if there's ever an occurrence of someone who, does pass,
Well,
that has done a
the
lot.
part I'm worrying about is what names go on the slide, because I don't know.
Well, I'm saying I don't think
Or just even
the people who have passed in
reading
town
the
this
name.
year. I mean, I think you have that list, or we have that list somewhere.
Or
Obviously,
Jay-
Carol's office.
Jay's going to do that part.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know
Carol
if we have
said-
to recognize anyone.
Carol
I mean,
told
I'm not
Jay
big
she
on
was gonna
making.
pull
I don't think most people want to be out there
the names.
singled out as a
Of those
hero or
passed.
a.
And he
there's a
has
few
that,
people-
from what I saw.
Yeah.
There are a few people in town who down the road, I can think of a few
So
people
we
in
won't
town.
do it this year, we'll wait till another year, and we'll let
Yeah,
Jay
we can,
handle
yeah.
the people who are no longer with us.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to
Yep.
fish or cut bait.
Let's cut
Yeah, I
bait.
think we certainly want Kevin on that list someday when he passes, that he's,
I really,
Let's
really,
hope that
really
that's
hope
later
now.
rather than sooner.
I really-
He's,
I feel
recognized
like-
for all his achievements in town, so we'd want to have a special event for that. I mean, right?
Things coming
There
up.
is the jinx to end all jinxes.
It comes with the chairmanship.
Yeah. Anything else from a town meeting perspective? I don't think that there was anything that the board was identified to speak on. I don't think that there was anything that was slated as being presented by the board. In years past, the only thing that had warranted, or not warranted depending on your perspective, but somebody's getting up to speak was the recognition for the plaques going onto the Wall of Fame, for lack of a better term. And we do not have one of those this year. So
Okay.
I think we're pretty nice and tidy from that perspective.
I did add a couple slides into some of the points you made. We now have the list of vehicles, we've got the list of roads we're going to address. So I can speak to the fall free cash that we spent, what we spent it on, if people don't recall from December 1st or whatever the date was that we had the meeting. And all the department heads will be there, so if there's specific questions, I assume that Jay will call on the appropriate person, or you'll direct who you want to answer it on your behalf.
So those slides will be part of the budget article, or when will those slides be shown?
So we have a presentation of all the articles, the motions for each one, and there's a slide following. Article 18 is Chapter 90, so there'll be a slide that just lists the streets, and then at the very end on the surplus vehicles, there's a list of vehicles we intend to sell. Don't need town meeting approval, we're just providing information should anybody ask the question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Because we know you're going to get up, David, and say, is there any vehicles currently available for sale?
Very likely I will get up. And
That's
ask.
right. So see, we were preempting you, and we're going to say, here they are.
It's always good to have somebody be able to press the button and say, there's the answer.
See, it was
There it is.
worthwhile asking that question, right, always? Now we're going to have a slide to help you,
Yep.
and everybody else.
Nope, I'm going to go do a dry run with school folks and the Norfolk cable folks around 4, so make sure everything works. And I think everything's ready to go.
Great.
Well, that's it. That's our workshop. That's everything that we wanted to cover. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to bring up, talk about, ask, or Blythe?
Oh, a couple little things. So we have a little area in our office next to Scott's office where we put correspondence that comes in for you. Like I brought down the letters from the COA to both of you. We can bring it to a meeting. We can scan it and send it to you. You can stop by to pick it up. I just want to understand over time what your preference is, how you like to get things like that you don't have to act on, but we want you to have. We're not going to give you every piece of mail that comes in, but anything we think is important, relevant. We're going to report, you tell the MMA that you both got elected, so you'll get on the mailing list for the Beacon, their newsletter, and we'll get you those sorts of things. But we have that sort of thing, and that's how it's been done, but we can certainly change it. For the two of you, whether you want tours or meetings with department heads, I'm definitely happy to set that up and take you around or do whatever is the best way for both of you at your convenience. So just let me know how you'd like to do that, and sooner or later is fine. And then I have a copy of the Mass Municipal Association puts out a Selectmen's Handbook. I can give you if you want to take a look. They're about $50 each. I don't know if you have a copy.
I have an electronic copy.
Okay, we can get you an electronic copy. We can order you a book. We can do neither. It depends on what you might like. It might be helpful information.
It's very helpful information. Granted, some of it's a little stale, but still, I think some of it's really helpful in terms of understanding processes.
Just let me know if you want one, and we'll get them for you.
Okay. Want to take a peek at it?
You don't need to decide tonight. I just wanted to show you that. So.
I will also advocate for going on a tour with Blythe to each of the departments to meet people. I think it's mutually beneficial for both you and for the town hall employees to be able to get some face time and shake a hand and put a name to the face and maybe dispel some of the mystique surrounding new people and change.
I kind of like Mystique.
No, well then you can dress in all black as you go through.
That's the way I kind of figured. I like the idea of a tour and chatting with people that I don't necessarily know. I was thinking maybe after the June 8th, go to the June 8th, because I noted that in the litany of things that they do, there were some really interesting sort of breakout sessions on finance and that kind of thing, and sort of get a little more knowledge, and then it's not that far away, so.
Yeah, they usually do a good job. And then there's also one at some point during the year, the Association of Town Finance Committees also does a session. That's more deeply
Is
into
that like in Bahamas or Bermuda?
Yeah,
No?
nope.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
Nice.
It's probably in someone's town hall, not as nice as this one, with a bad lunch, but it's really good information if you like to understand the financial aspects of things better and be very fluent in overrides versus debt exclusions and, recap sheets and all that sort of thing. And good tools on debt financing and capital programs and all that sort of thing. And the MMA annual meeting is definitely worth going to in Boston. Definitely, the Friday, not everyone can make the Saturday, but the Friday sessions are usually pretty good. And usually the governor comes and speaks and tells us, what revenues are looking like from the state next year and what their priorities are. And usually the U.S. senators come and speak, so it's not bad.
The breakout sessions are probably the most valuable from my perspective. I mean, the trade show is just kind of overwhelming, but and the general sessions even are a little bit over the top. But the breakout sessions, which are a little smaller, they give you the opportunity to ask questions that pertain directly to the issues that we face in our municipalities and listen to solutions that other people have in theirs. It's really nice.
Cool. That was really cool.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
Waiting for a motion.
Our motion will be requested then. I move to adjourn this workshop of the Board of Selectmen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.